Record on.
Record, ready everyone?
Yep.
Here we go.
Present.
All right, we're all here for the Improvement Services Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 28th. We are joined by Alderman Joe Moore, Alderman David Nettig, Alderman Jerry Wisbiski, and myself, Brian Danziger, as well as staff, including Director Steve Grenier, the original mentor and advisor for Von Helsing. All right, item number 1, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on October 14th,
Second.
2015.
Oh, Van Helsing.
Is Von Helsing?
Isn't it Van?
Von Helsing.
Oh.
This is German. Do you have a second? All right. We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion approved. Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 3, request by Dana Bullfuel, resident of 947 Velp Avenue, has been displaced due to a fire and is asking for additional on-street overnight parking exemptions in front of her mother's residence at 127 Woodlawn Avenue to expire on December 31st, 2015.
Chris?
This lady, I forgot my notes from Amanda, but this lady lives in an apartment building. Her apartment burned down, obviously being restored. She's living with her mom at this address. She should be back into her apartment by December 15th, so her Christmas present. To tell you the truth, she contacted us probably 3 weeks ago already,
Right.
and we said, continue to stay with your mom. We're not going to kick you out on the street. Your car has to park somewhere, and we'll bring it through the proper channels to
Yeah.
request it. Parking Division has already been honoring it, kind of as at an administrative level. We recommend that. Let her finish up her stay at her mom's house. It's not hurting anything.
Motion approved. Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Alderman Moore. All right, motion carries. Item number 4, request by Apple Tree LLC to install streetlights on the following streets: Indigo Bluff Drive, Peppergrass Drive, Peppergrass Court, Purple Sage Drive, May Apple Drive, and Mandrake Drive within the Preserve subdivision. Sounds like a My Little Pony commercial.
This is the Preserve, formerly the Baird Creek Preserve subdivision, now known as the Preserve and Baird Creek Preserve. The Preserve would be the western half of the subdivision, and if you look in at the graphic we provided to you in the packet, there is a stub of Bedford Road that's very near the center of the document. That's sort of the dividing line. Everything west of that is the Preserve, it's a homeowners association, a lot like a condominium, but it's not recorded as a condominium plat. So there are 1,500 to 1,700 square foot homes on very small frontage lots with some common areas, some amenities. There's a clubhouse at Indigo Bluff and Huron Road. This is Apple Tree Development who's got that. Then the eastern half of the development follows the existing or previously recorded plat for the Baird Creek Preserve, and that's primarily Redu Homes, building single-family residential on the eastern half. There are, I believe, 4 existing streetlights over in the east half. So those would be the 4 that do not have circles around them, and they have little yellow boxes next to them. Those were installed previously upon request by the developer. This area is starting to grow up, develop out. We've got a number of homes in there, and where the homes are currently built or homes are currently under construction, it's gotten to the point where they're spaced out enough that it's our opinion that all the streetlights for that section need to go in. Also, Indigo Bluff Drive up as far as Peppergrass, where Peppergrass Drive and Peppergrass Court come together. That'll be in the upper left-hand side of the graphic. Again, this is part of the Preserve. There are 4 lights that are needed immediately in red, and there are 2 additional on outlots that are sort of red dots. Again, high density of homes going in this location right now, and property transfers going on. It would be our recommendation to have all of the lights installed. So what we're looking at, and we have some differing costs associated with this. With the Bear Creek Preserve, the eastern half of the property, because that was platted and the plat has not changed prior to the changes in Chapter 14 of our municipal ordinance, the city is responsible in our sole cost for the installation of those streetlights. On the preserve site, the western half, because that was replatted under our new under the changes to the subdivision and planning ordinance, the developer is responsible for the cost of those lights. And we've been going back and forth with this developer relative to their desire for a decorative streetlight as opposed to a wooden pole with a shoebox or cutoff type fixture. Our requirement has been for many years that if a request for a decorative type of light is entertained, it would have to go in the entire subdivision. And one of the property owners out here was in favor of a decorative light, one was not. They couldn't come to conclusion on that, so ultimately, the decision is to go with a standard wood pole out here. So the lights on the western half of the subdivision, we're going to be receiving or have already received some payment from the developer on those, and all the ones that need to go in on the east half of the development will be at the city's costs. So what we're looking at is an approximate outlay of about $21,000 in immediate cost to get these in. They will all be 9,000 lumen streetlights, and I believe there's an annual cost of about $145 for each of the lights. So staff has been in contact with these developers, and what you see before you is our recommendation for streetlight installation at this time.
Mr. Wisbisky?
I know the alderman for that area, and he's a really great alderman, and I would move to approve this. I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Do we need to make any clarification in the motion about the payment for the lights that are on the further west side development?
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough, just to make sure we're covered on that.
do we even show that for?
Pardon me? Caught it late, my bad. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Stark?
Just have a quick question.
Yes.
Steve, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The lumens you mentioned, 9,000, was it 9,000?
9,000.
Is there a range as far as what existing lights and new lights, I mean, what's out there that we can look at where you say, well,
Most of your existing streetlights on residential streets are 9,000 lumen lights. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but once we get to intersections or
Collector streets. are
collector streets and above, then we'll go to a 14,000 lumen. The easiest way to, and we've gone to a lumen output because with changes in lighting technology, old incandescent rating factors no longer apply. But for comparative purposes, a 9,000 lumen is comparable to a 150 watt bulb, and a 14,000 is comparable to a 250 watt bulb.
but those are the two standards that
Correct.
we go by? Okay. Thank you.
Fair enough. All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 5, request by Alderman Tim Duane to consider a reuse day 4 times a year where people can put items such as windows, metal doors, cabinets, etc. out to the curb for pickup. Alderman Nenning has been kind enough to inform me that Mr. Duane is looking to hold this request.
Yes, he talked to me today, and he asked if we would hold that till the next meeting.
Fair enough.
So I make a motion to do that.
All right, we have a motion to hold. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Yes, Mr. Wisbisky.
I don't know if I could at least inject something here that
By all means.
that bothers me. I think we should also address is how you decide what's reusable and what isn't, and I can just picture just a whole bunch of junk being out there.
Well,
Somehow we gotta figure that one out.
I think that is part of the challenge with a request like this. I know we have the reuse store in is it Promenade that's located?
Yes.
And perhaps one of the things that I've seen in other communities, and obviously I will defer to staff on this, I don't want to make any presumptions, but I know they've also talked about having a section of the disposal area at one of our drop-off centers that would be, identified as reuse, like items that are still gently used or could be used for other construction, but that's why I think we have a reuse store, is for that purpose of.
Yeah,
of
I just
owners
wanted
going
to
there.
bring that up, but not to discuss it, because it's not on the agenda tonight, just to give us some
Sure,
thought
sure.
before we end up sitting here and hashing it out next time.
Yeah, I anticipate that staff will have a lot of input on this.
Okay, thank
We,
you.
we will, and I'm glad that, actually, I'm glad that Alderman Dwayne reached out to Alderman Netting on this, because it was going to be our recommendation that we hold this until December, because we'll also be getting taking in a communication from Alderman Zima that was originally forwarded to Protection of Welfare, dealing with
That's right, the
junk
junk
pickers
pickers, that's right.
and their ability to scrap or salvage to drop-off centers, and I think these two items
They
would
marry quite
Make
well
it
with each
very
other.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, very good. We have motion and second, all in favor? Oh, sorry. You know, you gotta wave just a little higher, sir. That's my fault. Go ahead, sir.
I'll try, I'm tired, no. Steve, thank you, Chair. Steve, I was just gonna ask for a little clarification on as far as the bulk drop-off. I know that's not on the agenda, but as far as where it's located and the hours of operation, I mean, we, as a citizen, we can drop off things. Correct?
You can, there are some limitations. It's limited to no construction debris.
Right.
For electronics, there's a separate electronics disposal or drop-off area. Some electronics do have a charge that goes along with it, and that's an
Right.
on your honor kind of a.
That's an honor system.
They are both located at the garages, both the east and west side garage. As things sit today, I believe the west side drop-off location is actually inside the fence.
Correct.
So that is somewhat limited in hours to when Public Works is open for business. However, the east side bulk drop-off center is located off of the Mills, or the Henry Street entrance to the garage, and it is outside the fence. So that is open
So
24/7
that's
at this
always
point.
open. Right, but the west side would be within
The 8 to
hours.
5.
Correct.
Well, yeah, technically.
Yeah, you're only allowed to use
Both drop-off bunker areas are supposed to close at 6 PM every day of the week. However, it's easier for DPW, just by the way it's set up, to slider gates closed at the west side because it's inside of the yard. The east side, the bunker does have gates, but on pretty much every single day of the year, it's a very popular site. The bunkers get so full, we can't even close the gates, so the east side ends up being kind of a 24/7.
If I'm, oh, go ahead, Mr.
So we have that online, don't we, as far as that?
It's not only online, it's also included in the packet that gets handed out to all 33,000 plus carts with our annual.
Yeah, I know it's out there.
Plus, there's in the city services book that goes out as
Correct.
well. And it's also notified in the paper when we talk about the bulk pickup,
Yes.
or the curbside pickup too. But it's good though, you know, one thing that we always recommend is even sharing that with neighborhood associations so they can remind their
Right.
folks about it. One thing, if I may, Director, just to add to that, bulk drop-off does not mean move out though.
No.
That
And
is
I want to
correct.
make sure that that's clear, because I think there has been some confusion on that. So it's not designed to take like 15 garbage bags.
Yeah, about a 53-foot semi-trailer up to it.
Yeah, so,
Right, no, I
There was just some
understand.
big confusion now.
correct. All right, very good. Anything else, Mr. Stark?
That's it, thank you.
Top notch. Item number 6, request by Alderman Nicholson for a street light at 2470 Van Beek Road. Yeah, we did.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Then he interjected at the very end as I
Okay,
missed it. so-
that's right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on, I'm sorry.
No.
Included in the packet, we've provided you with a graphic that shows the general area of Pecan Street, Edgewood Drive, Mary Jo Drive, Mary Jo Way, and Van Beek Road. The request is between Mary Jo Way and Edgewood Drive on Van Beek. Our standard spacing is 300 feet. We currently have a spacing of about 550 feet. Again, this generalized area, this is over in the Wilder School neighborhood. We have entertained a number of requests in that general area over the past several years. This is extremely dense tree canopy over the street. So we've done a lot of cutting back of trees around lights to get a better light distribution. We do have a situation here where we do exceed our normal spacing. So staff would recommend the installation of one 9,000 lumen streetlight between 247 2475 and 2479 Van Beek Road.
Motion approved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second?
All right, any further discussion? Mr. Starr? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'll make sure to
What
look for
I'm-
you,
What I'm
okay?
going to say is, this is a little bit, just a quick aside on
Please.
this one. What Alderman Nicholson had recommended or requested was 2470, which is actually on the south side of the street. The spacing simply worked out better, and it was more consistent with our typical staggered light
Yeah,
pattern to go on the north side. We're still in that same general vicinity in front of 2470, so we think this accomplishes the objective that you're saying.
And it gets us closer to that 300-foot
Correct.
range. Otherwise, you'd still be exceeding it in front of 2470
Just
on the
in
one
case there were
side.
any questions as to why we weren't right in front of 2470.
Was that communicated with Alderman Nicholson?
It has not been yet.
Okay.
Please do.
but
Is
we
this
can-
included in, will this be included in the minutes of the packet?
I can
or the
definitely
council
make,
agenda?
I
think
can
that
make
should
sure
be
that
there.
that happens, absolutely.
Yeah, that'll probably help.
I
quite
would
a
say
bit.
that would be great. In
Thank you,
case this
Mr.
was a
Warren.
specific request by the residents or something,
right.
it would be good
Sure.
for him to be able to reach out to them.
That makes sense. Thank you very much, Mr.
Appreciate
Morris.
it. Yep.
All right, item number 7, request by the Department of Public Works to revise language for section 9.212 of the code to exempt excavation within the right-of-way for the purpose of sidewalk construction or replacement, and include requirements for permits within recorded municipal easements. Staff?
I've included section 9.21 of municipal code in your packet, and there are 2 items of concern here. The first of which, if you look at the title, right-of-way excavation and occupancy, it is confined to the municipal right-of-way. We also hold a number of easements around the city where we have municipal facilities, and if folks are placing private services or infringing upon those easements, that's currently not discussed under ordinance. So if you flip to the back of the section.
Yep, section 2.
Page 27. What we're proposing is to add subsection 7 that indicates that the provisions of this section shall apply to recorded easements held by the city whenever and wherever the term right-of-way is used herein. And by doing that, we can encompass occupancy within those easements as well as within the right-of-way. So that'll accomplish one of the 2 items. The second item is there seems to be some, there's a lot of questions that pop up relative to sidewalk replacement or sidewalk installation regarding the need for an excavation permit, okay? That is a quasi-public amenity, but it's privately installed, privately maintained. Public sidewalks are. But they do occur wholly within the right-of-way. Excavation permits carry a base fee of $50, plus there's an additional charge for the first 100 square feet of excavation, and then an additional charge for every 100 square feet or portion thereof. And we take care of those costs on an annual basis when we set our service fees for the year. Discussing this item with staff who used to be in charge of these programs and what our past practice has been, it's come to my attention that we really haven't charged excavation permit fees for folks who are simply replacing sidewalk or installing sidewalk that was ordered in by Common Council. So what we are proposing to do on page 23 under sub 2 excavation permit subpart A, simply add language that states the provisions of this section shall not apply to the construction or replacement of public sidewalks.
Which we're already kind of following that practice anyway.
Correct, and all we're doing is cleaning the language up
Sure.
in this particular chapter of municipal code to reflect both current practice and to include, again, the easements as well as the sidewalks.
Fair enough. All right, discussion. All right, do you have a motion?
Just clean it up, that looks good.
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
What we'd be looking to do here would be to approve the request of the Department of Public Works to revise the language of section 9.21 of the code to exempt excavation within the right-of-way for the purpose of sidewalk construction and replacement, and to include requirements for permits within the recorded municipal easements, and forward to law department to place into final ordinance format.
Okay, that was my motion.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
second that.
May I second that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? The motion carries. No, I agree. Anything that helps stay consistent with what we're actually doing is always a good thing. Item number 8, request by the Department of Public Works to revise language to section 9.26 of the code to include a requirement to obtain an oversized overweight permit from the Department of Public Works for loads traveling on city streets which exceed legal length, width, and weight limits established by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Staff?
Currently, Chapter 9 of municipal ordinance does not have any regulations relative to oversized or overweight permits. The only place that oversized, overweight permits are addressed under code is actually in Chapter 15.66, which is the housing code. And it relates to the movement of houses or buildings across city
Not just
streets.
overweight loads.
So what we've done, what I did today was I took 15.66 and have made some modifications to it to reflect the what we'd be proposing to do is taking essentially the language of 1566 and making a companion citation 9.265, the transport of loads exceeding statutory size or load limits. And as we go through, in essence, what we've done is anywhere where it talks about a building, we've changed that to any load exceeding statutory size or load limits. And when we talk about moving a building, it's the transport of that
Sure.
load.
So this still would require a security bond sum of $5,000, eh?
It would require the bond, it would require that they have insurance on file with the city. We are currently, and have been for quite some time, we've been using this single trip permit application, and we've been requiring this of folks who are transporting their loads across city streets. All we're doing is making a better statutory time.
It actually
We're bringing-
applies to a
Right.
load, not just a,
Not just a house.
gotcha. So we're already doing this anyway,
That is correct.
just using kind of the wrong ordinance. Well,
well-
we have, the tool we have available.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So what we'd like to do is just make it
Alright.
very, very clear that this is also, not only is it in the housing code
Sure.
for any load, because we do wind up, for instance, we've had power generators for power plants that are shipped in either by rail or by ship that come into the port, and then they're offloaded, put onto truck transport for, we had a couple of
Yeah, I
them
think
in
the
the center
windmill
part of the
pieces
state.
too were like
Yep.
that.
I remember we had one that was going up to Door County, that one was, we were having fun trying to figure that one out because they couldn't go up 54, 57. The load was too high and wouldn't go under the Bay Settlement Road overpass, and that's not a traditional
Yeah,
cloverleaf
you can't,
interface.
you have to curl around.
So you actually have
so-
to go under it and then curl around. So we actually had to route them up 20, through town on Main Street and out on 29 until they got west of town. We used county trucks to get them back up to 54,
Nice.
57, so.
Just keep them off Nicolay Drive.
It gets rather interesting on how we wrote these things, but I wouldn't say it's a common occurrence, but it's frequent enough that we have experience.
No, and
doing
it's
it.
good to have language that's reflective of what's actually being done.
Correct.
So, is this the same thing, you'd want approval of the language as well as then sending it to law?
Right,
Or-
what we're doing is approving the request and then forward to law to place in final ordinance.
All right.
Make that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Fantastic. Item 9, discussion and possible action regarding Wisconsin Act 377 regarding implements of husbandry traveling on city streets. Staff?
And I'm going to turn this over to Chris, or have Chris jump in and comment with what I'm going to brief you on. But the short version of this is the state of Wisconsin has recently come out with some new regulations relative to load limits for implements of husbandry, tractors.
Okay, yep.
Operating on municipal streets, and we have a couple of options. We could do nothing, we could pass some ordinance language, opt in or opt out, and what we're recommending to do is to add some language into 9.26, and we provided you with some draft language here, that 926 currently is a prohibition on heavy construction equipment on certain streets. By simply striking the word construction out
Okay.
and leave it as heavy
Much more
equipment.
inclusive then.
Right, it becomes more inclusive. And then we'll add a second paragraph under 9.26 that stipulates the requirements of this ordinance shall apply to all implements of husbandry and agricultural commercial motor vehicles as defined by state statute under sections 340.01 sub 24 sub A and 340.01 sub 10.
No, 1-0.
1-0,
Or 1-0, I mean.
okay.
Oh, okay. So basically, this is still referencing then the Wisconsin Act 377, it's including it then in our ordinance.
Correct. The act, Wisconsin Act 377 has direct tie, by inclusion, ties into the two
Sure.
state statute references that are provided here. And what we will then do is, by inclusion, reference the state statute into our ordinance.
Right.
Act 377 basically says that the implements of husbandry, each municipality or entity within the state has to decide what do you want to do, but you have to specifically reference it. So
That's what I'm saying, 'cause that's the whole
farmers and-
purpose, yeah.
And the like, know what their limits are.
No, and then it looks like the director is the one that grants that permit as well,
And
so.
actually, what this does is it ties very neatly into the previous article.
Sure,
Because
sure.
if you have an implement of husbandry which exceeds legal load limits, you're obligated, the person operating that implement is then obligated to come in and get a single trip permit.
Gotcha.
So we
Mr. Oh.
selected the opt-in
Yes.
option that the state strongly suggests.
No, and that makes
All it
sense.
does is it says is that we follow statutory.
Sure.
rules.
No, and we're referencing that act then as well within our own ordinance, which is always a good thing to do. Alderman Moore first?
Just for some clarification on it, when we talk the agricultural commercial motor vehicles, do we have any occurrences right now, for instance, out by Red Smith, perhaps where there are still some fields that are farmed, and back in that little area of annexed land that's kind of separated from the city, where these people will now have to be permitted? Is that basically
That
what
is
he's saying?
basically what the Act 377 is about, that
Is there-
the municipality decides, are they gonna be permitted or not? You know, the city could opt out of that. I live 2 or 3 blocks from Red Smith School. I've seen tractors come down my street every now and then. I
Grandview
don't remember
Estates.
when the last one is, but there's,
Or
right
Grandview
at the end of my
Place, I should
road
say.
is that field, which is right on the edge of the corporate
And
limits.
if you remember, we recently had some conversation with some folks discussing some traffic studies or some modifications up in the Wolverine area that's off of Luxembourg Road.
Yeah.
Okay, and what we were talking about was trucks and farm implements coming in from the rural areas and traversing through that area to get north of the highway to get to other farmable fields. So what this does is it gives us a little bit, another way to help regulate that and get these folks to utilize the proper routes, keep them out of residential areas.
Well, I think this is going to pertain to Alderman Wisniewski probably more than anybody else
Yeah,
within the
Mr.
city.
We also,
With the amount of growth that there is on the east side, I mean, I'm glad that we're doing this now so that, you know, in 10 years, when everything's all developed out there, you know, we've got something that's been on the records and that we can create a precedence on. I'm curious about permit fees and any kind of hardship that might be caused on any of these
It's a no
folks that are
fee,
currently doing it.
oversized, overweight permit. We don't charge.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. I just didn't want to look at a revenue
Technicality,
source on
to
people that have been doing it for
administer
years.
them,
and-
you
Sure.
know, and make sure they're doing the right thing.
Okay,
Well, and actually, I'm sorry.
I'm done, thank you, that's fine.
Actually, just to add to that though, with this, it looks like if they attain such a permit though, this is a lifelong permit, correct?
No,
So
it's a
it's,
single trip permit. So
Ah,
if who's
got it.
planning every time they're planning on coming across city streets, they have to notify. us.
okay, so that's, okay, all right,
So basically when they're planting and then when they're harvesting.
okay.
See,
Well,
harvesting could be multiple
That's
trips
what I'm
over
saying, yeah.
multiple weeks. You know, is this something that you guys will be able to discretionarily permit, a 2-week permit, a
Yes.
1-week permit?
Okay,
3-week
that's what I was
permit?
wondering, so they
And
can
I- And
modify
I've done
it.
that when I served as city traffic engineer. We just identify on a single permit the days of
Yeah.
use.
Got it, okay, that makes sense, then that actually makes it a lot easier. Actually, because Mr. Slotnick's district actually has some farm equipment that goes through there
That's right.
too.
Correct.
So, and that's the only reason I'm thinking about it from this side. Go ahead, Mr. Nenning, and then Mr.
Okay.
Stewart.
Well, I was just gonna ask, what do surrounding communities do? You know, because obviously a lot of that equipment may cross municipal boundaries.
This is all very new. This just came out within the last several weeks.
Okay.
All municipalities within the state are required to pass an ordinance, if they haven't already, by the end of November. I recently went on just to see how everyone's doing. The state has a site that shows the lists of municipalities. Very few have done anything
All right.
yet. So we're one of the first municipalities. There's a lot of rural townships that are probably really very farm populated that did something early on, but as far as cities, we're one of the few, so
Okay.
we don't really have any.
And
anyone
do
comparing us.
nothing is an option. If you do nothing, you automatically default to what the state requirements are. So if we don't actually have ordinance language promulgated by the end of November, it's not a one and done
No,
situation. We are going to notify the state that we have approved a resolution. So I will have a resolution placed on the next council agenda, November 10th. And we will have the first reading of the draft ordinance at that time. Presuming that none of the alders take issue with it and this goes through okay, the normal process would be a suspension of the rules and advance the third reading, which would be in December. But by us passing the resolution in the November meeting, that will notify the state that we are in the process.
Sure.
In researching it a little, I found that because I had no idea what this act was, I found that the Wisconsin Counties Association have a really nice outline, kind of a pamphlet on their website that outlines the different options for municipalities. I guess we're getting into this and we'll see how it goes.
Mhm.
We can always alter it in the future if we have to.
Certainly.
Mr. Stoyer?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Steve, I was just going to ask, or Chris too, the fact is that there's no charge, there's no fee for this permit. I suppose then it would just be an ordinance violation. They decided if they did, if they did
Correct.
not, that would
For
be,
not following.
would go through that. Do we have quite a few non-fees per se for permits that you deal with, or?
Well, I guess that would
I mean,
depend on.
It's kind of a loaded question. I just
Well,
like to know.
it depends on what question we're asking. Do we have a lot of different types of permits that don't have fees, or do we issue a significant number of permits without a fee? Within Public Works, the two that immediately come to mind are the oversized overweight permits and obstruction permits. So from a number of permit types, I wouldn't say there's a large number, but from the volume of permits written throughout the course of the city, there are a huge number of obstruction permits written in a given year, and those are at no charge.
But do we defer to the state on some of this as far as the language that we need to look at? You know?
We actually have adopted the state's single trip permit application and just modified it to make it relevant to the city as opposed to the state.
I'm just
So we
wondering over time if, if it defers to the state, then that's one thing, but my thought would be if there was a way to get fees, on something like this, but according to the state, they don't have that.
Well, I don't think there would be anything prohibiting us from doing that. Generally speaking, when we charge fees for permits, at least within Public Works, okay, what we're doing is we're trying to cover our costs. So we have inspection, we have administration fees, we have a variety of things. For things that are of nominal time and effort, we would not charge a fee. So obstruction permits are granted in real time. They usually take 5 to 10 minutes to generate. So those we haven't. Here, we require that these oversized overweight permits come in 48 hours ahead of time. It generally requires that the traffic engineer take a look at the actual loads. What are the loads on each independent axle? What are the composite loads? How long is the vehicle? We compare that. He will then meet with one of the assistant city engineers to take a look at the pavement structure that we are anticipating traveling over. There sometimes is a little bit more interaction because a lot of times with the implements of husbandry being kind of new, and tractors are of a well-defined size, okay? In general terms, any of these oversized overweight permits, they could be anything. One of these generators I was talking about, I believe we had 28 axles and the trailer was almost 200 feet long. Okay, so we strongly suggest, we don't necessarily require, but we very strongly suggest that folks with these larger loads come through and do a route reconnaissance survey. So they'll actually drive the route to look for obstructions or things that could trip them up. And if it's now, if we're talking about a tractor that's 100,000 pounds and we're putting them over streets that we know are designed to accommodate that, again, it's relatively a quick process. If we're talking about a load of 235,000 pounds that's going to be traveling over streets normally designed to handle 80,000, we're going to go out after they go through and do a quick reconnaissance of that street to determine whether damage has occurred. And those provisions are actually addressed within the ordinance. And any damage gets billed back to the folks. So that's why we want the permit more than anything. Damage to pavement and trees. That's where we actually run into a lot of problems, is oversized loads damage our tree canopy to the point where, large branches are snapped off, they're not cleanly cut. And if that happens, we need to know who came through and who caused the damage, so we know who to assess those
Yeah,
damages
the
to.
permitting process isn't so much to target people, it's really, again, just to be able to track those things that could potentially cause damage to the
And
community.
we have had traffic signs in, less than a handful of traffic signals knocked over when
Mhm.
they take a corner because it's a long load.
So
So we're
are-
able
Right.
to talk to after the fact.
There's formula in place then as far as load limits,
Mhm.
the streets, all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
You have all that, okay.
Mr.
Good.
Zavisky, and then you, yeah, Mr. Zavisky?
You said that actually this is a one-time use. Where is that spelled out? Do we need some verbiage in here to cover that, a permit?
Well, it says on the very end of 9271, such permit shall be immediately revoked. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on, wait.
I couldn't find anything.
That would be for an obstruction permit.
No, sorry, I'm thinking 26, sorry, the permit in writing.
Well, here we have the requirement to grant a permit for, to move heavy equipment or similar machinery. Again, if we, the reason we're tying in implements of husbandry is because implements of husbandry have different statutory load limits than motor vehicles. So as long as you're complying with the load limits imposed for implements of husbandry, there's no permit required. We're specifically including the definitions of implements of husbandry so that we're not only dealing with motor vehicles. And then with draft 265 that we just talked about under item 8, 9.265, anything that requires if you exceed any statutory limit, you're required to come in and get that permit, and the permits.
Yeah,
No place does it spell out one-time use, because I can't help but think some people are gonna say, I've
It's
got a
actually, that
permit,
was what I bring
why?
up. too.
Yeah.
I actually have. an
The permit
application.
application actually on top is listed as a single trip
Oh,
permit.
oh, it is, okay, that's where you covered.
So what we can do is, it's normal, it's as a de facto or as a standard, it is a single trip. And if we modify it to include multiple trips, then it becomes a multiple trip permit.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So staff would have to amend that application to include multiple trips, otherwise it's automatically a single trip.
Also, a very simple suggestion, the ordinance could possibly end up reading, an oversized, overweight vehicle needs a permit each time it is operated on our
Yeah,
roadway.
I-
And that's the way that draft 265 currently
Oh,
reads.
okay.
So it's covered kind
And
of
then-
wording.
And then I was wondering, you say this becomes an ordinance, and our ordinances are enforced by complaint, usually only. And if in fact they do have an infraction of the ordinance without some type of a dollar fine or something like that, how are you gonna enforce the
There are-
abuse, I should say?
There are provisions under
Back into something else?
under municipal ordinance that for violations not otherwise enumerated,
Yeah.
there are default citation values that go
Yeah.
along with those.
It's almost like any citation where if you didn't follow an ordinance, there's
Right.
always a catch-all that says, well, generally you didn't
Yeah,
follow.
a rate schedule is established and maintained.
Yes.
Then last but not least, I'm inquisitive as to know where husbandry came from, because I've never seen that term.
It's a Greek term, actually, that comes from fostering and care. And what happens is it started with horse husbandry, and then it actually spread out to other forms of agricultural
Oh,
components.
really? Well, we don't. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was
Is
gonna
that
ask
true?
that too.
Yes, it is.
And husbandry is a more grown-up word than tractor.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Oh, really?
Implements
And
of
that's where,
husbandry.
that's where it came from. Well, we don't.
Yes, yes. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Chair Danziger Webster. I was actually just gonna offer a couple of amendments to 9.26, if, Chair, I guess if you wanna kind of
Well,
think on these, but the first part, one was the director may grant a permit. I thought that it should say free of charge at that point, in writing to propel or move, because the thing when people see the word permit, they think they have to pay for something, and people try to get around it.
But if I may, though, if we say free of charge, though, aren't we always saying with permits that there's a schedule of fees, though, that's related to it? I mean, do we need to write in a cost in the ordinance? It seems like a schedule of
But
fee. I
because
see what you're
this is,
saying.
but because this is new, because this is something that people have been doing for years and years and years, and
Okay.
because it's new, I think that something should be in there that the permit is of no charge per trip, or
Get greater
I think that there
acceptance.
should be something in there so that it actually does get utilized, so people don't just try to skirt it, bypass
Okay.
it. I see people trying to do things without a building permit all the time.
The only reason I
Because they don't want to come down and pay $30.
yeah, no, and I get that. I guess the only thing is from a legal perspective, if that's
Right.
something that should be written in the ordinance. Mr.
That's what
Chair?
one would go along with that one.
I'm fine with it.
I
guess
think
just-
something to consider, maybe even if we just, actually, I mean, I don't have a problem, we're gonna be doing multiple readings of this, and we can amend this at any time, but I guess maybe if that's something we could maybe consult with legal and see if that's an amendment we could make.
Well, the other thing that I will tell you is, if we go down to 927, there again, that's an obstruction permit, and those have always been at no cost, but we don't explicitly state that either.
Right.
Well, how about
That was
this?
my
one?
only thing was new, because when this comes forward, I don't wanna see any newspaper come out with a
Sure.
huge headline that says,
Now must have
city
permit.
start charging for permit.
Tractor permit.
Or, yeah, start requiring a permit for rural travel.
For
and, you know
husbandry.
what?
How about we ask legal? Is that all right? Are you okay with that, Alderman Moore?
I'm
If
okay
we-
with submitting this right,
Yeah.
as it is, and then, I mean, we can always amend this on the floor at the
Correct.
time of the reading of the ordinance too. You
And
know,
the only other thing that I would offer is although these are offered at no cost now, if there ever was a decision to charge for that permit, it would
There'd have to be an
require.
And that's the only
ordinance
reason
amendment.
why I'm saying
Okay.
schedule fees is typical.
Oh.
Alderman Story, you were going to comment on his amendment.
I was gonna follow up on that, and I agree with Alderman Moore to a degree, but I'm thinking that if there's other permits that would be free, so to speak, and it's
The
not
wording,
stated as such,
yeah.
I don't know, does that open a can of worms? I'd
If you're
be
specific to
comfortable
one, not to
if
another.
legal would answer on that.
That's the only reason I was suggesting having them.
I might just look into this a little bit more on my own
But,
time, and then if I feel it should be in there, maybe I'll bring it up then at council
Okay.
floor to
The,
amend it, but.
The summary that I got on Act 377 says that one of the things it does is it creates a new no-fee permit issued by the Department of Transportation and local authorities for implements of husbandry and agricultural CMVs that exceed statutory length or weight limits.
So at the state
So-
level,
so they
Apparently,
say
there's
that
a
it'd be no
state
fee.
thing
requiring
requiring
that it be.
Oh.
it,
So,
right in there.
okay. The second part of that now, as you know, Director Grenier, growing up in a country
Farming community.
community and Pellegrinis and such. When you've got, let's go cut the hay on Saturday and it rains for 2 straight weeks, it doesn't happen. I think that maybe we should have something in there if this doesn't, violate what the state ordinance is here, but Director of Public Works, and when it states Director of Public Works or designee. I mean,
And
if you're on vacation, you're out of town, I think if we have or designee in there, that whoever's in the office can take care of it.
I believe.
Just as a
Covers
clarification.
the other part.
I believe that's actually,
That's the definition.
Is that on a page I don't have?
That's in the meat of it, I think, probably.
might be at the very beginning of the whole thing. but-
In most sections of the ordinance, of chapter 9, under definitions, I know, for instance, I'm looking at 9.21 for right-of-way excavation and occupancy. Under definitions there, director is the director of public works or his or her designee. So that is a common definition.
And it's just not on the single page that we've got.
Correct.
That's where I.
But it applies though to that section.
Okay. And then the only other thing was on what Alderman Wisbicki had brought up with the permitting of the time, is right at the end of 9.26, where it says machinery may be propelled or moved. It would be very easy to just drop a comma right there and sub out that period and just put, and designate a period of time or restriction that permits are valid.
That makes sense, actually.
I think if we just added that sentence in right there, then
It covers the duration
it
piece
kind of
and
covers the
date.
duration, whether,
Yeah.
not getting the permit and then seeing what it's valid for,
Sure.
knowing that. you
That
can come in.
interferes with your rain issue though, because
Not
now.
necessarily,
Well, wait a
though.
minute, the permit is issued, the time is on there, and now it rains for 3-4 weeks.
Right,
and
they're gonna have to
you're
do it
cutting
again
your own
anyway,
shoulder.
but-
No,
Yeah.
no, but then, I mean, it can be amended or extended, again, based on the director or designee. It's the same permit, we're just simply,
Yeah.
allowing for it to be,
I think then it's at least written in to know that this isn't just, you have to.
And I can attest from a historic perspective, dating back 25 years when I started with the city as the traffic engineer, we would have those things. So if something went wrong and they'd say, we're not moving it tomorrow.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm gonna hold on to this permit here and you
Right.
call me back. It's already checked out. You're ready to go. The only thing that's gonna
Mm-hmm.
change is the date and we would amend the date
and that's what, no, and that's what I'm getting at is,
when they decide when they are gonna
What?
move it.
Thought I saw Batman
Oh.
fly by the window.
oh.
It's getting really windy out there.
Yeah, no, that's the thing though, is, again, the purpose of this is more just for visibility on what's being done. So as long as the permit process is taking place, we're fine with, I mean, I shouldn't say we're fine, but we understand the fact that things may change. Again, this is just more visibility, knowing that,
Yeah.
implements of husbandry, I'm gonna start using that word more, are going through
I love that word,
the
too.
residential
I'll
areas.
put that in my
so-
vocabulary now.
Top notch.
Right, and the funny thing with the ordinance is you want to be concise and to the point, but you also want to make sure you have every base.
Yeah,
covered.
yeah.
You don't want to be too wordy, but you want
No.
to make sure that you have
I'm actually okay
questions
with
that might be asked.
I'm actually okay with that amendment though. I think that's not
Oh,
a
that's
bad addition, because it does cover the duration and time issue.
Watch out for him, he's seeing things. Okay?
So that's all that I have. Yeah, that was kind of crazy.
All right.
So what I have here is, and designate the duration for which the permit shall remain valid.
Perfect.
Yep.
Cool.
Perfect. Do we need to make an amendment, or can we just include that all in the motion?
Did we?
Because it's still draft.
Correct, what we're doing is approving the draft.
Yeah.
And forwarding on to law department. to place
Correct.
the
So
final
I don't think we need
ordinance.
to, I mean, we know you've captured that, so,
Cool.
all right. All right, so I think we had
So
a
we
motion.
can, did we have the motion
I
already?
don't think we did.
Okay,
Well, I'll make that
motion.
motion then to approve
Second.
this draft as presented.
correct, with
Or
the,
as amended.
yes, with the suggestions made, to forward the law, as you've said, to write into ordinance. All right, we have a motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone see Batman? Any opposed? That motion carries.
We're the husbandry owner.
All right, item number 10, application for a tree and brush trimmer license by J&D Services. Staff?
This is a new vendor within the city. We have performed reference checks and recommend approval.
Motion approved.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have an abstention on that. The owner of that business is a friend of mine and a client.
Anyone abstain? All right, that motion carries. Item number 11, director's report.
Very brief report tonight. I'm pleased to announce that we do have a engineer starting on Monday to fill the vacant spot within
Huzzah.
the special projects section. We are currently completing the second round of loose leaf collection, and with the weather being what it is today and yesterday, I'm anticipating that a lot of the leaves that are hanging on are going to be dropping pretty soon, and we'd love to see that happen.
Still targeting the 20th, sir?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Some pretty streets when you drive down right now.
The
Lots of
apple
old
trees
leaves.
and the elms have not done their
I
job
know. Received a communication today from Kurt Schrader, who is our trapping expert, and he reports that numbers are up this year. Looks like the muskrats had 3 litters this year rather than their normal 2 due to favorable weather, so he thinks his preliminary numbers are 74 muskrat, 4 mink. crap out of city facilities
Holy
this year.
mackerel.
He can get quite a bit for those pelts.
No, not like it used to. but-
No, but still, true.
What about the skunk?
One of the reasons that we'd love to see the leaves come down is we need those same vehicles to start our switchover. Weather forecast for tonight indicates we may be seeing some light snow not accumulating, but
Dare you?
November is right around the corner, so we'd like to see those leaves come down so we can get the equipment swapped out.
There are some out there this afternoon.
Staff has been completing some preseason training and prep work to get ready for that. And at the last meeting, we did provide to you a PowerPoint presentation relative to winter operations, taking a step on the direction that the committee gave us. I had a conversation with Operations Director Pierlot and Shelby in the IT department, and we are taking that presentation, expanding it, and actually turning it into a public service announcement. That'll be recorded. We can make that available to anyone who wants it, and it's going to be programmed on the public access
Great,
channel
thank you.
as
Top
well.
notch. That's exactly what we wanted.
We'll put it on the DPW or the city's website, DPW website, and on the social media sites, both within the city of Green Bay, the Department of Public Works, and all of these meetings, all the committee meetings, are actually on a YouTube channel. So we're going to make that available on the city's YouTube site as well.
Excellent.
Also
long
for
is
the
it? How
neighborhood
long is it?
associations.
Certainly.
Oh,
4 minutes.
yeah,
4
it's
minutes.
pretty brief.
Yeah, it's not bad.
We were accommodating today's attention span.
Motion to receive and place on fire, done.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Motion
opposed?
adjourned.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Well done, everybody. Clean meeting. Productive.
How about you want to rake,
Very efficiency.
rake the leaves out of the tree?
You